And welcome, welcome, welcome. This is Peter Winick. I'm the founder and CEO of Thought Leadership Leverage, and you're joining us on the podcast today, which is Leveraging Thought Leadership. I am truly in awe of our guest today and honored that he has decided to join us today. So he doesn't need an introduction, but I will do so anyway. So I have Ken Blanchard on with us today. Ken is one of the most influential leadership experts in the world. He's the co-author of the iconic bestseller, The 1 Minute Manager, and more than 65 other books, whose total sales have exceeded 22 million copies. In 2005, he was inducted to Amazon's Hall of Fame as one of the 25 best-selling authors of all time. He's the Ken Blanchard Company has been around for a long, long time and has been in the business of deploying leadership development to people in the workplace for many, many years. But Ken, thank you so much for joining us today.
Well, Peter, it's a joy. This is our 40th year in business. Can you imagine?
I think it's going to work out okay for you. I have
Yes.
the feeling. I think there'll be 40 more and then some. So I don't even know where to start. Maybe why don't we start backwards and say, sort of, tell us about some of the changes, some of the many changes that you've seen in the marketplace over the years and how you've adjusted to take advantage of them, be that on the publishing side or the leadership development side. What's different today?
Well, it's interesting. You know, when Spencer Johnson and I got together, he was a children's book writer, wrote the whole series called Value Tales, The Value of Honesty, the story of Abe Lincoln, The Value of Courage, the story of Helen Keller. And my wife met him at this cocktail party we were at, and she hand carried him over and said, "You guys ought to write a children's book for managers. They won't read anything else." And so that's how we got started. He was working on a 1 minute scolding with a psychiatrist, and I invited him to a seminar, and he came up running at the end and said, "Forget parenting, let's do the 1 minute manager." And since he was a children's book writer and I'm a storyteller, we decided to write a parable because our favorite books were the Jonathan Livingston Seagull and the Littlest Prince and Augmentinos.
Right.
And so we started writing short parables. And I think that was really new in the market in 1982. I don't think there had been any business books that were parable type books. And now you'll see a lot of them. Patrick Lencioni has done a great job with parables. With the addition of at the end, he in the appendix he goes into more depth in the concepts. But that was a new thing in the market. I think that people are still looking for uh, easy to read, simple stuff that they can use, and I think sometimes people just write too much. You know, I always say to people, you might have 3 or 4 books in there. I did write a big book recently called Servant Leadership in Action. I got 44 contributors, but most readings books, the articles are too long, and this is all the articles are about 6 or 7 pages. So I tell people it's a great bathroom book. You can
Yeah,
read
exactly.
one while you're sitting there. Uh, but
Exactly. But let me ask you then. So in 1982, when you put the book in parable form, if we think about some of the parallels there, that was a fairly radical or unconventional modality to put a business book in, right? And if we, fast forward almost 40 years from that, there's lots of other ways and modalities that business content gets deployed that people wouldn't have taken seriously, 5 years ago, 15 years ago, 25 years ago, whether that's short form video, whether that's pull down library. So talk a little bit about that, because I think one of the breakthroughs in the 1 Minute Manager, besides the content was really good, you didn't take the format so seriously and were willing to experiment with a modality.
yes, and I think today technology has done tremendous to publishing. Because hardcover books that people can have in their hands, they still sell, but most people sell more books online
Sure.
or do video kinds of things. I think you need to really be open to it. And I see, Peter, a lot of people going to self-publishing today
Yes.
because with all the different ways to publicize your stuff, one of the things that I think the publishing companies haven't done a great job is the publicity. They want an author who can get out there and sell it themselves.
Well, and there's a catch 22 there, right? So what the publishers want is an author that can bring an audience to sell the books through. And if you actually take that thinking one step further, if an author has a platform and a followership that they can sell books through, do you really need the publisher?
That's really the question. So it's really, I think the publishers have to be more innovative. We've done a number of things in the last few years with Barrett Kohler because
Yes.
Steve Ferrasante, I think, was creative.
Yep.
They only do 15 books a year about, and they really focus on them. And they have an author's day, which no company's ever. You go up there and you meet everybody from every department, and they talk about how they're going to help you with your book, and you really feel like you are part of an organization, and you can call anybody and talk to anybody. And so I think that's been a good one. And they're also getting good at finding online stuff. So I think the publishers have to be more innovative now too.
Yeah, no, I think that's right. Well, and part of what Barrett Kohler does, to their credit, is create a community because there's only so much I as a publisher can do to support you. But one of the things that I can do that's actually quite cost effective is to put together a community of publishers that can share best practices and help support one another and those things. And I think it's that level of evolved thinking
Yes,
that is changing in the publishers world.
yes, it really is.
So I want to switch for a moment from publishing, which we could talk for hours on, given the depth of your experience there, to sort of the importance of really having a solid framework, methodology, and model. So I'll go back to situational leaderships, and one of the things that I think is beautiful about it is it's timeless, right? And because the model is so strong, there's not much room for interpretation outside of the intent of the model. So could you tell a little bit about how you came to develop that model and where that's taken you?
Yes, Paul Hersey and I met at Ohio University back in the '60s, and Paul taught a leadership course, and I came to be administrative assistant to the dean. You get a kick out of it. All of my faculty members, when graduate school, said that if I wanted to be at the university, I should be an administrator, and because I couldn't write, but as I told you, I think they could understand it, and but I took Hersey's course, and at the end of the course, he came to me and said, Ken, I've been in this business for 10 years, and I think I know more than anybody else. And they want me to write a textbook, but that's not my forte, the whole writing aspect. And
Sure.
but I've been looking for a good writer like you because he made me take his course and he read my papers, and so uh, we decided to write a textbook, Management of Organizational Behavior, utilizing human resources. And so we really understood the field and what was happening there. And off of that, we started to see that there were some problems with some of the key models, and we ended up developing situational leadership. We initially called it life cycle theory of leadership. And then in I think a third edition of our book, we introduced situational leadership, but it's been out for God well over 40 years, and it's still widely used. And when we started our company, we developed what we called at that time situational leadership two, SL2, kind of our version of situational leadership. But it's really common sense organized. I think that's what people want, because when they come to training, they go, "Whoa, why didn't I think about this?" And so I think that people writing ought to be thinking about their audiences more than they think about trying to appear like they're really bright, uh, and they know everything.
So, but let's talk about that because I think there are a lot of folks that write, and part of the motivation might be maybe it's ego, maybe it's to show you're the smartest guy or gal in the room, or to sort of show off this new research that you've done or way of thinking. But this genuine approachableness of all that you've done, I think, has been sort of probably the secret to your success is making it not simple but digestible.
Yes, and Spencer really pushed me on that because when we did a first draft of the 1 Minute Manager, everybody loved it. And I said, let's go to New York and get a publisher. He said, no, they don't know us. They'll hit us over the head and take all the money.
Right.
He said, I think we should get feedback. And so we actually self published it and sent it out to all kinds of people. And in fact, that's been a pattern of mine. I don't release a book to a publisher until I've at least had 4 different feedback sessions. And after each feedback session, I gather the feedback and rewrite whatever people suggested I think makes sense. And so when I know I really have a good book is when people say, "Look, I'll pay $20 for a Xerox copy of this thing."
Yeah.
I don't wanna wait till it comes out. And I think a lot of times people write until they and their editor like it. Well, you're not writing for yourself and your editor, you're writing for your readers, and that's why you wanna give them a chance to give you feedback.
That's fantastic. So let's talk for a minute. When you were trying to get feedback, and I like your 4 cycles of feedback to sort of get the book to the highest level. Doing that 30 years ago, I mean, that's focus groups, and that's a lot of work, right? Doing that now with the power of the internet is so easy to do, and you can get that feedback globally. So how do you go about? Tell me a little bit about your process of getting feedback on your content before it's a ready to ship book that we're all going to know and love.
We have a summer cottage in upstate New York near Syracuse on Skinny Atlas Lake, and they have a little country club there that's perfect because they got GE executives and teachers and farmers and all. So I put out a word in our newsletter that I got a new book I'm writing, and if you want to pick up a draft copy in the manager's office and come to a certain date, I'll buy you dinner if you fill out the feedback form and come. And I usually get 50, 60 people come,
Wow.
and I tell them it's a buffet, and I say during dinner, the job at your table is to come up with agreement on 3 things you really like about the book, 3 things you think should be changed to make it the best book you've ever read in this subject, and the best title that you can come up with besides the one that's on it. And then after dinner, I go around with a microphone and a recorder, and they report out, and then people also give me their forms, and it's really an amazing process because you learn so much. Like I wrote a book with Norman Vincent Peale when he was 86 years old, and I said my moment that Norman and his wife Ruth were going to come up for the feedback session, so I had over 300 people that night.
Wow. Wow.
And after I went around to get feedback, I asked Norman to share with the book group, and he got up and he said, "I've never been for a free for all like this in my life." He said, "When I finish a book, Ruth and I pray. Ken doesn't trust that process." I mean, he got the biggest kick out of
That's
it,
funny. Well, they're not
And
mutually
so,
exclusive. You could do both, I
yeah.
guess.
Oh, I know. And some people do it online and all,
Yes,
but I kind of like the personal
got it.
stuff, and it's really interesting. Like, you get titles. I wrote a book with the 2 top whale trainers at SeaWorlds, and I we called it from killer whale to kids in the power of positive. And one of the tables when we went around, they said, "Why don't you call it Whale Done?" And I went, "Duh." So of course that became the book, and it became a bestseller. And
Oh, that's
so
awesome.
you can learn a lot of stuff, but you have to be feedback. I've always said is the breakfast of champions. A colleague of mine, Rick Tate, taught me that years ago. But as long as you don't get defensive and you want to make it the best book possible, then listen.
That's fantastic. So I want to move now into sort of what I would say is the bread and butter of most leadership development organizations, which is selling the content into corporations, right? So the books are great, the speaking's great, etc. But the bread and butter of the business is educating managers and leaders and executives inside of an organization. So can you talk about sort of the business models there and how to best be of service to companies that are looking to train their managers and executives?
Well, we've been fortunate. We have about 50 people who teach our content out around the world. And then we have a bunch of sales folks and all, and they work together. And People will go to one of our public seminars or will read a book and they'll say, "God, we're interested." And then they go in and they'll do a pilot with people and share with them. So we do a lot of communication with people in companies, and it really is good. As they say, we got over 300 people in our company, and an office in Toronto and London, and quite a presence in the Far East. But it's the real selling is face to face in terms of doing training in organizations because they want to talk to somebody
Right.
and see if they can adapt it. So we have a product development department that tries to customize stuff as needed to be, and work with them. So it's an exciting, fun process.
One, and you mentioned pilot. I think oftentimes people don't realize that large companies, even though they're large and they've got tremendous budgets and all that, can be a bit risk averse, like to test things out. So that you're not going to go from 0 to 100 miles an hour in a heartbeat. You have to prove that not only you know that your content works, but does it work for me at this time in my company? So let's try it out on 50 folks or 100 folks or 500 folks, whatever. Monitor how that works, and then from there, take it across the organization.
Yes, that's usually the way it happens for sure.
Got it. Got it. So we start to wrap up here. What are 2 or 3 tips that you would give someone that's sort of in this space or diving into this space, in the positive or the negative? Do more of this or do less of that, or absolutely do this or never do that. What might you say?
Yes. Well, first of all, if you're a person who's a good speaker and you want to get more speaking, having a book is really powerful because somehow when you have a book, people think you're brighter than you are, probably. So the
I
people,
won't tell if you won't.
yeah, so people who speak put a book out in terms of what your favorite speech is. It doesn't have to be long. Put it in a way that people can understand, and just be really available out there and train some other people. Because my wife and I started the company initially. It didn't take us long to realize that if we had to do all the training, we would be exhausted.
Right.
And so you got to train and get other people excited, and it's I think that if you love what you do, you're never going to have to work a day in your life. And if you really love what you do and you exude that both in your speaking and your writing and your interactions with people, you'll do fine because people love people who are
Sure.
enthusiastic and excited. But it's a lot of work to get to build a business from scratch, and you need some good sponsors. And I recommend to everybody you need clients before you start a business.
Ah,
A lot of people have this
yeah,
big business
exactly.
idea and they open their doors and they got no clients, but they've hired staff and
Right.
all that kind of thing. You need clients. We were very fortunate. We got a chance to meet the Young Presidents Organization, this group where you had to become president before you were 40 years old, and they kind of adopted us, and so we got a lot of distribution from them.
Well, that's great. And then build it out from there.
Right.
Anything that you would recommend folks avoid?
Well, I think I would avoid trying to put out too many things. Focus on a few things and get them out there and done. And I've kind of broken that rule, recently because I published too much. But in the beginning, don't focus on your next book until you got the one that you put out there really publicized and out there and done your work on it.
Yeah, I think that's a good point because a lot of authors and thought leaders, they get bored, right? Because you start to write a book, then there's the publishing process, and then it comes out. By the time it's out and getting some traction,
Yes,
it's sort of 3 or 4 years old in your mind. So you're bored, even though the market isn't
yes.
is clearly not bored, and you move on before you should.
One of the things I would have them all remember and put it in your house, an old friend of mine said this, the production minus sales equals scrap.
Ah,
So
right,
you
right.
gotta find somebody. That's why I think getting feedback before you even publish it, so you got fans even before it comes out is a great way to go. So don't publish it and say, "I wonder if anybody will like it." Test it.
Yeah. Yeah, you should know. So this has been great. I appreciate not only your body of work. I have been a long fan for many, many years, but your willingness to come on and share with us your journey because it's been remarkable. Thank you so much for spending the time with us today, Ken. I truly appreciate it.
Well, I appreciate it, Peter, and good luck to everybody out there. We need more communicators and helping people create organizations where people like to come to work because when you read the data, 60 to 70% of the people in America are disengaged. They don't like their work. So that's silly.
That's
We
way
need to
silly.
do things to help them. Yep.
Thank you. Good advice. Thank you so much, Ken. I appreciate it. To learn more about Thought Leadership Leverage, please visit our website at thoughtleadershipleverage.com. To reach me directly, feel free to email me at peter@thoughtleadershipleverage.com. And please subscribe to Leveraging Thought Leadership on iTunes or your favorite podcast app to get your weekly episode automatically.